y'all. It's Jay Myrex of Altruwest.com. Back once again. What's going on with y'all out there? I appreciate y'all for tapping in to the Altruwest Music Production Podcast. We do these weekly, Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Time. It's a good conversation that we have each week, talking about music production tools, techniques, and different ideas that are relevant to the music producer community. So glad you were able to tap in and hang out with us for the next few hours or so, because we're going to be chopping it up. You saw the title today. Today's title, we're going to be talking about the power of having two samplers and why you need to consider having two samplers in your setup if you're a sample-based music producer, or even if you're not a sample-based music producer. We're going to talk about that today. So, and I also want to know from the community, what is your desert island pair of samplers? Let me know in the comments, let me know in the chat. If you have to just have two samplers in your setup and that's it, which two would you have? I want to know from you guys that are watching. If you're watching this right now live, let me know in the chat. If you're watching this as a VOD later on, let me know in the comments. What is your desert island pair of samplers? What two samplers would you select if you can only select two samplers? So this will be a good one. But yeah, shout out to everybody that's tapped in. Shout out to everybody that's been checking in with me on this channel, watching the content. Tyrone Sellers, appreciate you with the super chat, fam. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Shout out to everybody that's been supporting the channel. Shout out to everybody that's been checking me out on my my second channel as well, the Altruwest TV Clips channel. Been doing some good conversation over there as well. So shout out to everybody that's been following that and checking out the content there, a little bit different content. Before we get started, I'm gonna definitely send a shout out to people that are in the chat and just acknowledge people that have been supporting, and definitely gonna acknowledge my members, my True Sound creators, my True Sound Creator Plus, and my Studio Guest Pass 4K members. Shout out to everybody that's been supporting there. So yeah, if you're not already a member of the Altruwest membership, I suggest you check it out, man. The members can let you know for sure. We've been getting it cracking, man. A lot of great content there. A lot of great content in the membership. This is a great place if you miss any of the streams that we do as far as like outside of YouTube and whatnot. A lot of good sessions going on in those. So if you missed any of that stuff, we had a dope session the other day doing some tracking out and recording with the SP1200. That's in the membership. Of course, all of our other content as far as the members content is concerned, like we have interviews from EA Ski and Snipe Young and Divided Souls in there, lots of archival content in there, and a lot of other stuff that is yet to come, but do check it out. I think if you're interested in digging a little bit deeper and seeing a little bit more of the workflows and the techniques and different tools, these are where you get a lot more uncut video content, stuff that gives you a little bit more insights. And I'm sure some of my members can let you know about how useful and insightful some of that stuff can be, as far as like just getting better thoughts and ideas about how you can work and how you can explore creativity in your studio. So if you're not a member, I recommend you become a member of Upbeat Media. My moderator will be providing you with a link where you can become a member if you're interested. Let's see here. DJ Loop Beats, one of my members here, man. Appreciate you for tapping in as always. Blessings to you. 10th Letter Beats, Jay Leno. What's going on with you, fam? Tracks All Day, another one of my true sound creators. I appreciate you, fam. Upbeat Media, of course, shout out to Upbeat Media. Upbeat Media will be directing traffic as always. So if you're interested in the membership or anything else we were talking about during this stream, Upbeat Media will be providing you with the link where you can get access to anything we're talking about. So watch watch the chat there, and of course, moderation is in effect. So please keep the commentary respectful. You can definitely disagree. I don't think I don't have a problem with people disagreeing with me. Trust me, I just have a problem with people being disrespectful. So as long as we're respectful, you can disagree, you can have different opinions, and man, articulate yourself. That's what I say. Instead of getting crude and snappy with people, like I said last week, use some empathy and articulate yourself so you can get your idea across. I want to know. I want to hear back from the community, even if you disagree with me. I want to hear your thoughts. So I appreciate you, and thank you, Upbeat Media, for keeping things cool in the chat. Sample Props Official. He says, "What are you using to catch the line mixing level?" Okay, maybe I have to. Let's log that question. We'll park that question. Maybe Upbeat Media, if you can add that to our Ask Me Anything file, so we can get to that. I don't know if I'll be able to get to that today, because I'm not understanding the question completely, but I think it may not be completely on topic. But I'll definitely get to that in the upcoming stream when we have a little bit more bandwidth to do so. Get to Nard, what's good? One of my Studio 4K members. Appreciate you, fam. Thank you. Petro Media Inc. was good with you. He said only 2 samplers. You know why I have 2 plus. Yes, sir. I see some of y'all answering the question. I'm gonna read some of these answers already. Tracks All Day says Desert Island MPC and Machine. Final answer. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Get to Nard says Akai Z4 and Serato sample. Okay, okay. I smell what you cooking there, sir. Shamir Shine, one of my true sound creators. Appreciate you as always, fam. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Petrometer says, if I had to have 2, I would go with the 1000 and the One Plus. If I can't use a computer, then it's the 1000 and the 5000. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, we're not going to say it's not just about standalone. Which 2 samplers realistically? Let's see here. AWA Ali Allege OZ. So I'm sorry, fam. I know I'm butchering the name. He said we rolling with the Force and the SP404 MK2. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The Golden American says Octatrack MK2 and Torso S4. Okay, okay. That's a nice one. That's a nice one. Tracks All Day says I grew up on the 2000 XL, so that's the one I would live on. Maxed out memory and an M4 processor inside. Yes, sir. Old Wood 214 says MPC1 and SP404 MK2. Yep. Let's see. Chris Davis 9135 says SB1200 and the MPC 2K or 4K. Okay. Lots of good ones. I'm probably not going to be able to get to all of them. I'll get to them later. I will get back to the chat though. I know last week I wasn't able to get to the chat much. I had a lot of stuff that I needed to get through, so I don't want to run this week's chat or this week's stream like that. So there'll be plenty of time for me to respond to the chat. But yeah, we'll be doing that, and like I said, we're gonna do our podcast today, and of course, after the podcast, make sure that y'all get ready to go over to the after show on Twitch. That'll be happening at 6 p.m. So we're gonna try to give you plenty of time to have these conversations here, but then also we'll be going over to Twitch later on. So appreciate y'all for pulling up as always, fam. Be a good conversation, man, and be a good conversation. So, why did I do this particular topic? You may be wondering. So the inspiration for this particular topic came from a couple of things. Some of you guys saw my video that I released a couple days ago talking about the limitations of the SB1200. And I'm sure for some of you guys that video wasn't necessarily exactly what you thought it was going to be. I know that I could be a little bit expressive in some of my my thumbnails, which is fine. But I think ultimately I was just wanting to give people some acknowledgement of the limitations on some of this old hardware, especially the older drum machines, the 12-bit drum machines, samplers, and keyboards of yesteryear. They can for sure be very limiting as far as MIDI capabilities and sample time and all, you name it. They have a lot of limitations. So that video that I did on the SB1200 was really just to showcase and provide some context to some of the limitations on an SB1200 and even a W30 and some of the other samplers I mentioned, but also to kind of give you some ways to think about how one could approach addressing those limitations. And as I mentioned to you, one of the ways I would do it, and some of the, I demonstrated that also this week in my members section. One of the ways I would do it is just track the stuff out from the SB1200 into the DAW and continue to add things there. And that's what we demonstrated this week in the membership. However, I had some other questions come up from that video that made me think about some things that I haven't really talked about yet. And one of the things that came up was a question that was asking, how can I record a live loop into a 2000 XL while the sequencer is running? And the short of that was what we're going to talk about in this particular video, which is that you can do it a few ways, but one of the ways that you could achieve that is by having a secondary audio recorder or sampler in your setup that allows you to quickly capture things while your other sequencer is doing other things. And some of you guys may not be there yet. Some of you guys may not understand why that would even be a consideration, but it just depends on your workflow ultimately. And I would say that ultimately, two samplers in a setup can be much better than having a single sampler in a setup for quite a few reasons, which I'm going to talk about in today's podcast. So it's really answering a workflow topic, but also answering some other things that may not be on your radar as a music producer. And for some of you, it may already be a part of your workflow. So I may be reiterating things to some of you guys that you already know. Some of you guys are quite advanced, and some of the stuff that I talk about, sometimes you guys have quite a bit of thoughts and ideas about it, which is fine. But I think this will be helpful for everybody, regardless of what level you're on at this point in time. Samplers have obviously been used in standalone for a very long time. You have a lot of producers that are notable for just using a single sampler in their setup and being able to do all of their music on a single sampler. People that come to mind, Eric Sermon being able to just get everything going on a W30. His Roland W30 beats are amazing. All the stuff he did on, the Redman albums, and of course EPMD albums, and Keith Murray albums. That's the power of the W30. The W30 is an incredible sampler. It is a very interesting sequencer. And if you learn how to do all the things that it can do, it's a very powerful system. I'll say that. So, not Keith Murray. Eric Sermon is an example of an artist that is able to do everything on a single sampler. Another great example would be someone like a Pete Rock, who for years was very much an SB1200 guy. Just SB1200 And he was able to do so much with just the SP 1200. Those of you that know some of the limitations of the SP 1200, one of the limitations is the voicing, the voice polyphony, and the fact that he was able to even program bass lines the way he was able to do so with just that. It's something special because those of you that know, like it doesn't have all the control of um, you have very limited control over ADSR, for example. Your attack, decay, sustain, release. You have very limited capability there, and programming a baseline from a one shot is a very tricky task when you have a system like that, and it requires some finesse. And he's an example of a guy that was able to really overcome a lot of the limitations of a single sampler and make it all work on a single sampler. Um, of course, we can talk about Alchemist and Jake One and Timbaland, all ASR 10 guys that, and Knots too. I can't forget about my bro Knots. Why? I almost slipped up. Can't forget about Knots. All the ASR 10 guys. Shout out to them being able to just make that work with a single sampler and really do some amazing classic records. But don't get it twisted. This whole like sampler pairing has been going on for quite a long time as well. And there's a lot of power in pairing samplers together. I want to talk about a few of the classic pairs that we've seen over the years from different producers and kind of talk about um, some of what they were able to do with that. So, one example I want to bring to your attention would be Mr. Easy Mo B. Easy Mo B produced for people like Notorious B.I.G., for Tupac, for Craig Mack, for so many like legendary artists. And this is a guy that used a sampler pair. So he's not just an SP 1200 guy. You can see in this picture, he's sitting with the SP 1200 plus an Akai S950 rack sampler, which is a powerful setup. It gives him much more capability. It gives him a much more varied workflow. There's a lot of sound manipulation things that he can do with this setup that would not be possible from just using a 1200 by itself. So this is an example of a classic pair. A lot of producers use this one, but Easy Mo B is one of the guys that just really made that pair sing. I'm sure you can find different sessions of him playing different songs he produced. One of my favorite ones that's also on the I think it's the West Coast Theory DVD that I have, where he plays the sequence or the sounds in the sequence from Going Back to Cali. Um, yes, this is an amazing setup. A lot of producers have used it. I see someone in the chat said Ski Beats used this. Yep, Beats used this setup, and he also started to incorporate the S5000 into his combination as well. So shout out to Ski Beats. But yeah, Easy Mo B, definitely an example of um, a great pairing of samplers to achieve an even more expansive sound than just a single sampler would have afforded him in his setup. And that's why he was able to do a lot more. Some of the samples that he would incorporate, longer samples, for example, the S950 allowed him to incorporate some longer samples than the SP 1200 with its 2.5 seconds of sample time per pad. So, and there's other things we'll get into as well, but I think just sonically that gives him quite a bit of advantage. So that's one of the examples. Another example, as you may have seen on my thumbnail, is the S950 plus the MPC 62. And this guy right here, works of Mart, Mr. DJ Premier or Primo himself. Primo is one of the guys that made the S950 plus the MPC 62 sing. So you can see the S950 behind him. You see a couple other things too. Shout out to that Motif ES rack back there. I did a demo on that one. Shout out to the Planet Fat back there. He got a couple other goodies back there, but a big staple in his setup was the S950 and the MPC 60, and that gave him quite a bit of capability to do much more in his production than just simply small sample chops. So another example of a producer that had a powerful two sampler setup. So two samplers can be super powerful. Just, the S950 is a sampler that has variable bit rates, so you can really mess with the sound and do like some very interesting things that you couldn't do with just the MPC 60 alone. And vice versa, the MPC 60, it's an MPC. It is a MIDI production center. Shout out to the old MPCs, right? It is a beast on MIDI. So that combination gives him the capabilities to do so much more than just a single sampler could. And I see some of y'all already saying he need to go back to that. I mean, that's a whole different topic, But I hear you. Another example of producers that have like a legendary pairing. Got this guy here. Some of you guys may not be a fan today, but we can't take away the legacy and the contribution of Mr. Kanye West himself. Kanye is legendary for having the combination of the ASR 10 and the MPC 2000. That was his combination, and that afforded him to get around a lot of the limitations of the ASR 10. ASR 10 is a very powerful sampler, probably one of the most powerful keyboard samplers that was ever produced. However, sequencer wise, it does not match or it does not compete with an Akai MPC. I don't care which MPC you have. All of the MPCs are much powerful in terms of sequencing and track count and MIDI output than an ASR 10. So that combination there gives him some incredible power as far as being able to record ideas quickly and also have a full sampler that has this keyboard layout for quick access and quick sample assignment, and also some of the interesting things that the ASR 10 does, such as being able to copy sounds in memory without using up additional memory time or sample memory, which is an incredible function of the ASR 10 that a lot of people don't talk about. But Kanye definitely has a legendary setup here. Another legendary setup that I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this. Dr. Dre himself. So many people have probably seen this particular image. Dr. Dre with one of those old M Audio MIDI controllers. I see a core controller by Native Instruments on his desk, but obviously you see multiple MPC 3000s here. And he had multiple MPC 3000s for several reasons. I think a big part of it is also just his studio workflow and the amount of musicians that he may be working with, and having the ability to have all the sounds up at the same time and being able to record things all at the same time is part of why you see multiple MPC 3000s from Dr. Dre here. But this is a very clutch setup for him. This is a big part of his workflow for a period of time. But he's not the only guy. You had also guys like DJ Shadow. DJ Shadow had that multiple MPC setup as well. He was famous for producing his introducing album using multiple MPCs because of the limited sample time that the MPC had, and the um, the nature of recording that he wanted to do and the nature of composition that he wanted to do required that he had more sampling time, and thus two MPCs were incorporated into his setup. Those are a few. Those are a few guys I can name. There's plenty of others. One of the other ones I wanted to mention, of course, you have Kev Brown. Kev Brown also had a um, multiple sampler setup. Some of the classic videos that you see of him include him on the 2000 XL plus a Roland 505. So that 505 is another gem that he kept kind of tucked, at a certain point to kind of be able to do a little bit more with the sample than the stock MPC 2000 XL could achieve on its own. So having two samplers is super powerful, and producers, a lot of producers have used multiple samplers together to really create a lot more expansive music than you could on a single sampler. And that doesn't knock any of the guys again that use a single sampler. The guys that I mentioned previously that use a single sampler all did incredible music that I love. But you can see once you start to investigate some of these samplers and what their limitations are, you can understand why people are pairing samplers and creating a little bit more workflow and flexibility. And even today, like there's a lot of pairing that you see today. One of the I would say modern classic pairs of samplers is the MPC Live plus the SB404 MK2. That is, I would say that's a modern classic. You see that all the time. So many guys out here, so many guys and gals, I'll say it like that, have that pairing, and it's for a reason. We're gonna get into that, but it's for a reason. That's a classic pairing for today's standards. Another modern pair that I would like to throw out there would be the Electron Octatrack plus the Digitakt. Now, Octatrack is a very unique sampler, loop playback system, and more. And it is very capable of doing things on its own. But when you combine the Octatrack with something like a Digitakt that has a bit more of that direct sampler workflow, you have a very powerful union or pair of samplers that can achieve almost anything you'd want to do musically. So that's another modern pair of samplers. What are the advantages? I've been talking about all these guys that got these pairs, but what's the advantages? So I would say one of the big advantages is workflow. Using one sampler as an audio recorder while the other is playing back a sequence, for example. That was one of the things that came up in my comments. Somebody had a question, and the question was, how can I record a live loop into my MPC 2000 XL while the sequencer plays? Now the answer, get another sampler. Because if you have a second sampler, the MPC 2000 can play. You can do what you want to do as far as like sequence is concerned, but then you can also be recording into that secondary sampler while the sequence is playing and capture loops on a secondary sampler without impacting the playback of the primary sampler, and in that case would be the MPC. So that's one major advantage for, especially for when we're talking about older MPCs. Of course, modern MPCs have audio track recorders and loopers, and we can get into that. We're going to get into that as well because there's still some advantages even for a modern MPC user. But for a vintage MPC user or a vintage drum machine sampler user, having that secondary sampler allows you to record and capture content in ways that are much more beyond what the MPC or the SP1200 can do, or even a W30 could do for that matter. Another advantage in terms of workflow is just being able to play back longer samples, aka having more sample time. You know, something like a SP1200, like an OG one. Now I don't have an OG one back here. I have the Rossum, and the Rossum got a little bit more sample time. It ain't crazy. You can't go overboard with this bad boy. This one only got 20 seconds of sample time. And I'm cheating. When I talk about SP1200 beats, I know I'm cheating. I ain't at the 10. I haven't graduated to being able to do everything on 10 seconds yet. Shout out to everybody that came up in that school. This one got 20 seconds. But OG got 10 seconds. So if you get past 10 seconds or you need more than 10 seconds, that secondary sampler will save you, especially if you have one that has the ability to play back long samples. As I mentioned, this particular sampler has 2.5 seconds of sample time per pad. But other samplers, like other rack samplers, we talked about the S950, I have a S3000 right here underneath it. This can play back long samples. It's not limited by the 2.5 seconds per note or anything like that. You can play back a long sample, no problem. So if you got a long loop that you want to play back over your drums or something like that, you can do that with that secondary sampler. So it gives you more sample time, and it gives you the ability to potentially play back longer samples than maybe some of your older or vintage samplers can play back per note. So big advantage there. Some samplers, such as a modern MPC or Machine Plus or a S2400, they do have a looper. They do have a looper style capture device in it. So one of the advantages of having that secondary sampler is if you don't have one of these newer models, you can kind of emulate some of that playback behavior. Not totally. It's not, don't get me wrong. It ain't the same thing as having a built-in looper. It is a little bit more cumbersome, but it definitely gets you past what you are limited by within a single sampler. Another workflow advantage, though, is better sound separation when you have multiple samplers. Now, a lot of your classic samplers, or your MPC 60, your MPC 3000, your SP 1200, W30, a lot of that stuff actually has 8 outputs standard. And that is very useful for sound separation, especially when you want to track out music. If you have the right setup, right audio interface, shout out to RME. Get the right interface with the IO. If you got the right IO, that sound separation is critical for getting that workflow to track out your music all in one pass. So having those additional outputs can be critical. However, once you get to 8 sounds on this one, or MPC, my MPC 4000 has basically 10 outs. Once you get past 10 sounds, that second sampler that has an additional 8 outputs can save you. It can save you. It can allow you to track out everything at once, because if you have sounds that are distributed across those different samplers, now you have 16 outs or 18 outs, and that's way better than having 8 outs, especially if you have 16 sounds or 18 sounds in your production. having that additional sampler expands the output capabilities as well. A lot of modern samplers, especially a lot of the ones that are like that entry level to mid range, don't have the full 8 outputs, which can be a little bit more of a cumbersome workflow unless they have some type of export or bouncing capability where you can quickly just get all the stems out of it. Of course, a modern MPC, like an MPC 1 or something, you can export and create stems and whatnot, or you can transfer it to a desktop application and do your big one. Or, you know, another thing with the modern MPCs, obviously, I talked about it on this channel. You can connect the class compliant audio interface and expand the outputs. And that'll get you the ability to get on say a machine plus you can get up to 16 additional or 16 outputs if you have the right interface. So having that second set of sampler outputs can greatly improve your tracking out capabilities. Um, Even if you're using like a synth or I should say it like this: if you're using a multi-timbral instrument that has multiple tracks or multiple channels and you can access different sounds, a lot of those multi-timbral instruments like a motif, a montage or something like that, a lot of that stuff doesn't have 8 outputs. So workflow wise now, if you record something on the MPC, for example, connected to a montage or a motif, you're limited to however many outputs each of those devices have as far as tracking is concerned. So on my motif, I got additional 4 outs, then I'm stuck. But if I used 8 sounds, I don't have 8 outs to come out of the motif directly. But if some of those sounds are now in a sampler that has 8 outputs, now all of a sudden I have the ability to track out everything in one pass. I have the ability to transfer from the keyboard, the multi-timbral keyboard, to a sampler that has more outputs and more capability to streamline my recording workflow. So that's another advantage, is having the additional outputs that some of your big boy samplers have. I'm not just talking about the little sampler. Little sampler that got 2 outputs, you kind of stuck with what that is. But when we're talking about the big boy samplers that have 8 outputs, that can completely transform your workflow and give you way more flexibility there. Another advantage is the tonal qualities. Tonal qualities of different samplers. Having different samplers can allow you to access different tonalities and sound characteristics, which may be helpful and useful in what you're creating. So, for example, like a MPC 60 or SB 1200, those have very unique tonal qualities. They are very specific, especially when you start pitching samples down and whatnot, and doing things that kind of incorporate like their filter systems and whatnot. These things have a very unique sound, and because of that, it's a good timbre or good sound color to have inside of your setup when you need to use it. Um, I was playing some samples in my last video talking about the SB 1200, and you can hear like when you start playing back sounds that are part of a very unique sampler, it can completely transform the tone and give you a texture that is second to none. So having access to those different colors from unique samplers is a critical thing that I can say can give you an advantage if you are into that. Chris Davis said flavor. Exactly. It's flavors. It is part of this. They're different colors, different paints. If we want to use visual media to also describe it, um, it gives you different elements to work with to provide some context and give your art some texture and flavor in the end. So Having those different samplers, multiple samplers, having a pair of them gives you more flexibility than just relying on a single sampler. Some samplers also on this tonal, this sound topic, some samplers also have effects engines that can be used to process sounds internally and externally. And that can also give you some additional flavor that a single sampler couldn't possibly give you. And a great example of that is we're gonna say the top ramen of music production. But y'all know where I'm going. The SP404 is is an amazing example. Some of the effects on the SP404 are goated in certain communities and circles, and I think it's a great flavor to have for certain occasions. So having that SP404 as an additional sampler and also an additional tonal processor gives you an advantage, especially if you are using something like, a MPC 60 or a 3000 or a SP1200 or something like that that doesn't have internal effects or has limited internal effects even. That SP404 now gives you so many different sound textures to be able to process sound and then push it back into either your MPC or whatever other sampler you may be using. That combination now is super powerful. So that's another sound advantage of having multiple samplers. Another sound advantage is this whole topic of variable sample rates, not being limited by a single sample rate. Like some samplers have, 44.1, some samplers are 30K, some are 32, some are 22. You have certain samplers that have a fixed sample rate that it can record samples at, and that will impact the sound quality that you get from it. But some samplers have variable sample rates. Great example of that, as I mentioned earlier, S950. S950 has variable sample rates. The W30 has variable sample rates. The Zoom sample track, that is an example of one that is a sleeper. Uh, some know about it, but the Zoom sample track also has variable sample rates. So it allows you to manipulate the sound and decide what sample rate is best for the source material that you are capturing. Because different sounds can sing and shine if they are captured at different sample rates. Sometimes you want your drums at the highest sample rate, but then sometimes you want your instruments at those lower sample rates to get a very specific texture on, like the melodic instruments, for example. And there's no rule to that. That is a matter of taste. That was just an example. But that variable sample rate capability, having that in your setup gives you more tonal qualities that you can use within your production. So considering having a sampler that has that variable sample rate, like a S950, a W30, a sample track, things like that are super valuable in a modern sampler workflow even. Another advantage is synthesis and sample playback. Some of the drum and phrase percussion style samplers tend to have very limited sample playback types, either one shot or very basic, attack and decay, or even some of them just have a decay parameter, like at SP1200, for example, just has that decay parameter, right? No key groups can be found on a SP1200. No key groups can be found on a MPC 2000 XL or a 60 or a 3000. You don't have key groups there, but some samplers do. So, one of my favorite samplers, obviously MPC 4000, it does have key groups, and of course, the modern MPCs, the One, the Live, the X, those have key group capabilities for sure. but some of these vintage samplers don't have it. So then having a combination of that more percussive phrase sampler style plus a more keyboard or rack style sampler, like a W30, an Akai S950, S3000, S5000, S6000, Z4, the Emu, all the Emu rack samplers, Yamaha rack samplers. There's so many to choose from. ASR, we can't forget Ensoniq. Don't let me escape and not say all the Ensoniq, the Mirage, the EPS, the ASR. All of that stuff gives you the ability to create keyboard instruments and synth patches and things that are far beyond what you would be able to do with, say, just an SB1200 or just an MPC 60 or just a MPC 2000 XL. So that combination that I showed you with Kanye West, for example, having an ASR plus the MPC 2000 XL greatly expands the capabilities of what types of sounds he's able to create, how he's able to manipulate sounds and samples. So it is a much more varied and more expansive set of sample content that he can work with because of that combination. So having that second sampler will allow you to get around certain limitations. And even to the point of the modern NPCs, as I mentioned, um, although the modern NPCs do have key groups, their key groups are limited and don't have the full functionality of some of the classic keyboard and rack samplers. And I've shown scenarios where the modern NPCs don't play back certain types of synth patches and things in the way that, say, a 4000 could, or an S3000, or some of these vintage samplers can, because of the expanded parameter set and expanded playback capability. So having even a modern MPC, you still would have an advantage if you looked at some of these older rack mount synths or rack mount samplers to add to that setup, because that can greatly expand the sonic capabilities, as we said, having things like variable sample rates, or just lower bit fidelity and whatnot, but also having just this more expansive playback engine can really transform what you can do in the studio. So even if you have like a hybrid, like a MPC 4000 or a modern MPC, there's still quite a bit of value in that secondary sampler. It's the sound shaping and sound morphing capabilities that you get with some of those older samplers or different samplers. Doesn't have to be an older one. It could be just a different or separate sampler. Um, the effects, even if you had a modern MPC plus a SP404, like I said, that 404 greatly expands the tonal capabilities, the effects that you can process, and even on a performance level, like the tactile or tactility of having that secondary sampler gives you a lot more flexibility as far as how you perform. And we didn't get too far into that performance, but having two samplers definitely gives you access to a lot more of what you would want to perform with, while not having to keep paging or going through different banks and things of that nature on a single sampler. Having all of the sounds and samples and effects that you need to route in one scene, so to speak, or one setting, so to speak, instead of having to go through pages, is a major workflow advantage, even if you have a modern MPC. And it's ultimately just having that flexibility in workflow. That flexibility in workflow can just be a game changer in the studio. I mentioned having the additional outputs as well. That's a big one. Um, Even if you have a modern MPC, if you have a modern MPC and you want to track out stuff, let's kind of take a look at that for a second. If you have, say, a MPCX, let's talk about it. MPCX has 8 outputs. Great, amazing. However, how many sounds do you use on an MPC track? Depends on your style of music, obviously. For me, I can easily use up 8 sounds by just having drums, couple of one shots, and some percussion. That's 8 sounds already. And then if I start adding synths, plugins from that sampler, or from that system. I won't just say the sampler from that system. So we start using some of the internal sound generators in the MPC. I'm already out of outputs now. And then if we start to add anything else like drum synths or any other sound generators, I can easily hit 16 sounds on a track, like not necessarily playing all at once, but I can definitely have 16 sounds that are happening in a song or in a composition over the course of the song. So having that additional sampler that has more outputs can be a game changer. It really can be a game changer that helps to really provide with more flexibility, and it gives me a better outcome as far as the limitations of the outputs. So for me, even with a MPC XSE or something like that, I would still want to have a secondary sampler that has more outs so that I can have flexibility in how I track things out. Because I'm one that likes to track things out analog still. I'm not one that really does a lot of just exporting. I like to do real time bounces. And as you start to really get into manipulating sound, there's things that you can do in real time to the sound as a performance on the sound that gives you a little bit more character and movement as well. So I think exporting is great if you're into more of a static loop situation, but having the ability to record in real time gives you the ability to impact the sound in real time, filter sweep, and other types of modulations that can give you some character and some movement. So that's why tracking out is very powerful. So having that additional set of outputs can be a game changer even with a modern MPC. I said I wasn't going to talk the whole way through, but I'm going to give you my last little piece of info. I asked you guys what your desert island pair is. I said I would give my desert island pair as well. So my desert island pair would be the MPC 4000 and Machine Plus. That combination would enable me to achieve, number one, a very high sound quality. We've done the test on this channel. You've heard it. You already understand if you watch my content. You know MPC 4000 has a very high quality sound, very punchy sound, very robust sound. But the Machine Plus is no slouch. It is very strong and it has a very good sound quality as well. It was often selected as one of the best sounding out of the group that we tested. So this would allow me to get a lot of the sound quality I'm after. It also would enable me to get the modern chopping styles and things from the Machine Plus. It also would give me the audio looping capabilities, resampling capabilities, effects processing, and more. And another thing I want to throw out there, just with respect to the whole sound comparisons that we did on this channel, the Machine Plus, if you don't remember, had the closest SP1200 emulation out of the group. And in some cases, some of you guys preferred the Machine Plus sound over the SP1200. Now, I'm not going to say that it sounds better than the SP1200. You will not catch me saying that at all. But if I was only stuck with two things, I believe that I can get a lot of what I would go for from a SP1200 out of Machine Plus if I had to choose between the Machine Plus and the SP1200. I'd probably choose Machine Plus, and I could probably live without having the SP1200 because I could gain so much more from the Machine Plus. The MPC 4000 gives me a much more robust MIDI sequencing than the Machine Plus could ever offer. Machine Plus is not the MIDI guy. Machine Plus it's very limited as far as like the MIDI capabilities are concerned. If you compare it to something like a MPC, so if I want to do complex MIDI parts, that 4000 got me covered. The 4000 also has the built-in 10 analog outputs, as I mentioned. But also when I couple it with the Machine Plus, if I said Desert Island, but just humor me here. If I had the Machine Plus and also hooked up a class compliant audio interface, I can have up to 16 additional outs, which gives me everything I would need as far as tracking out is concerned. You're talking about 16 outs plus another 10 outs. I got 26 outs there. And then also the Machine Plus, of course, the sound library. Shout out to the Native Instruments sound design team for the sound libraries and the built-in synths and drum synths in there too. That gives me an amazing setup and workflow that would allow me to do everything that I would need to do. So that's why I would pick that. But that's just my personal preference based upon the type of music I'm into and the sound that I'm going for. So I think, if you're into something else, I'm gonna go to the chat and see what it's about. I'm gonna get off of the podium now and let some other people be heard. So I appreciate y'all, man. This is always a great discussion. And let's get to the chat now. Let me get some of this tea first before I get to the chat. And yeah, by the way, y'all, if y'all getting value from the stream, make sure y'all hit the like button. I'm seeing we got 41 likes. Get the likes up, y'all. Appreciate y'all, man. We've been going for about an hour now. About 85 of y'all in here. Can the brother get some likes, please? Hit the like button. Share this. Make sure you're supporting the platform. Likes are free. Likes cost you nothing. Definitely appreciate anything else, but likes, if you're watching, if you're getting value, hit the like button. And if you are watching this and you're not subscribed, I don't know at this point what you're doing. If you're watching this channel, if you're watching this stream right now and you have not hit the subscribe button, something is wrong. Fix it. Let's see here. Getting into the chat though. Chris Davis, 9135 says the Plus covers more ground, but the SP12 rules texture. I agree. We talking Desert Island though. Desert Island, because I know what the SP1200 sounds like now. Not because I've heard it on records, but I have it and I've played with it enough now to understand better now. I know how to better approximate the sound for my own liking. And that's why I tell you guys that exposure to samplers and sound sources is critical, because when you get these plugins and things, you get these emulations, it's always based upon someone's subjective opinion of what the sound from that machine was sounding like to them. So you need to know what it sounds like for yourself so you can say, okay, even if I had to emulate it, I understand when I'm in that ballpark and when I'm not. So now me having that information, I could say, yeah, I could go to the Machine Plus and get in that ballpark and understand when I'm there and when I'm not. Let's see here. Jack Retro, what's good? One of my true sound creators. Says ASR X Pro into the Live or X. Yes, sir. That sounds like a dope setup. Trade Studio, salute, fam. Appreciate you. James Hardy, 5578 says 8 outs on the MPC 2500 and 8 outs on the S950 MIDI through 16. Yes, sir. That's a great setup right there. Chin Beast says everyone has a 404. He said, I really hate the SP404, most trendy decorative machine ever. You know what, man? It's not for everybody. But I think it's a powerful machine if you understand why you would use it and what you shouldn't try to use it for. And when I say you shouldn't try to use it for, you can try to use it for anything you want. Technically, it's about creativity and ingenuity, and then you can use it for whatever you want. But there's certain things that, especially the old SP404, just ain't doing well. Like you want to pitch up a sample, pitch up, pitch down a sample. Good luck. There are effects on there that allow you to kind of like pitch shift, but boy, oh boy, that ain't the same thing as just having a sampler that can easily tune a sample. So that's one example where I wouldn't use the SP404. But for effects processing, yeah. For performance, yeah, yeah, it has value, but it's not for everyone. I do agree. Room at the Top Studios, bless up, fam. Appreciate you, man. One of my true sound creators, man. Appreciate you. The Golden America says Pioneer Torres SP16, although limited, is great for tonality. One of the great forgotten samplers. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And if I'm not mistaken, that one has like some Dave Smith filters on it, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Torres had some Dave Smith filters on it. If I'm not mistaken. Let's see here. Rush Music says there's a video on Facebook of a guy getting busy on the S20. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. S20 is an interesting one. Fang Pang, what's going on with you, man? Appreciate you. Salute, fam. Let's see. Old Wood 214 says you can use the SV404 as a recorder as well. Sample full song to a pad and export. Exactly. A lot of people use it to trigger full songs or portions of songs or stems even. That it I always say that the SP404 was like it was kind of like the poor man's instant replay. Kind of was a DJ tool first. Kind of like, hey, if I'm a DJ and I want to be able to trigger samples and sounds and quickly record loops and whatnot as I'm DJing my set, that's what the SP404 was originally kind of positioned as. It's like a DJ tool. But of course, DJ tools always have some type of overlap with the beat maker community. And listen, anything that can record a sample can be used to make music. That's the reality of it. If it can record audio, you can use it to make music. So people figure out ways to do things that it wasn't even designed to really do. Let's see here. Chin B says MPC 4000, the best MPC. They haven't come close since. Man, it's one of my favorites for sure. You know, arguably they haven't come close to it. I would say for me, for what I want to do, they haven't hit that mark yet. Let's see here. You see, oh yeah, you see the special edition back here. Shout out to EA Ski. Let's see here. Rush Music says I use MPC1 for chops plus MPC 2000 XL with 8 outs for drums with the MPC1 triggering the 2000 XL. Good workflow, makes sense. Definitely getting a different sound out of the 2000 XL than you're getting from a 1. No question about that. MPC 2000 XL was my first sampler. Definitely has a very unique tone. I know when it first came out, people didn't really think of it that way, but you know, hindsight is 2020, and definitely now you can tell the difference between an MPC 2000 XL and any other sampler for that matter. It has a very unique sound. Let's see. Shamir Shine says then there's a S2400. I think I'm missing the context there. S950. Chris Davis, I see you. James Hardy 5578 says MPC 2500 for sequencing and S9. Yes, sir. I got you there. Got you there. Going back. Let me come back in time now. Shamir Shine says one needs